Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. This video is featuring the STAMPtember set from Colorado Craft Company and Simon Says Stamp. This is Catch a Star. Before we get any further into the video, I'm going to tell you that this thing is going to sell out fast, and when it is gone, it is gone. So pause the video, go get it if you haven't already. If you are here because you missed out on the stamp set, don't worry. I'm going to actually show you how to do the same technique with another stamp set from Colorado Crafts that's also from Anita Duram, and that is Magic Time. So we're going to make two different cards with the same technique, and you can obviously apply this to any other cards as well. So just we'll get about story time. But anywho, so the whole point of today's video is we're going to be creating some glowing nighttime scenes. And so in order for this stamp, because it is very generously sized, to fit onto my cardstock, I did have to bend back his little net quite a bit. And fortunately, the stamp is flexible enough that I was able to do that. And then I'm going to be, both of these cards are 1-layer cards, so I'm going to be doing some masking. I trimmed out my little mouse, but I kept the negative part of the net here so that I could do some no line stamping inside to put some stars in his little net. I don't know how well they show up in the pictures, honestly. In real life, you can see that there's little stars in there. But I'm not sure how well they showed in the pictures. But anywho, so with that mask in place, I am going to stamp in a couple of stars from the same set in, like I said, some no-line coloring ink. And then I'm going to add just some very simple light yellow coloring just so I don't lose them while I'm doing the rest of the ink blending, because I'm doing that first before I'm doing my Copic coloring. So, like I said, this is part of the STAMPtember release, and those collaboration sets, this collaboration set is once it's gone, it's gone. So the Magic Time, the other one that we're going to create, is a stamp set that's produced by Colorado Craft Company that is always in stock. It was part of their last release with this particular artist, and I know it's very sought after. So that is something that I guess I tried to take into consideration. I know that some people love STAMPtember and some people don't. I am aware of that. I don't participate in it in any other way than the companies that I work for or companies that invite me to use their set. The designers that get the sets, if they're not Simon Says Stamp designers, then they are determined by the company. Let's go back to the card. So here I'm putting my mask in place. And then this is something that is a little bit unique and it's a little bit tricky. That's just being honest. So I wanted to do the stars in the background, and it is a little cumbersome, guys. I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't. So I stamped them and embossed them so that they would show up really brightly in the sky. I would probably not mass produce this, or if I did, I would leave the stars off, because once I stamped the stars and heat embossed them, I then realized I had to mask them. And I had some instant regret. But anywho, so I am stamping these with my mask in place. I know that there is a risk that some of my embossing powder will kind of stick to get caught in the crevices of my mask. And so I'm trying to be a little bit strategic about how I am applying my embossing powder so that it doesn't flow over the mask where it could get caught up against it in any of the, if there's any sticky parts. And then I am going to go in with just a clean paintbrush just to kind of clean up any areas that I need to. That part wasn't too bad. Really, it was trimming out all of the stars and masking them that was too much. It was much too much. But anywho, so once I get this where I want it to be, I am going to heat set it until everything is melted and solid and shiny. And then we will move into the ink blending. The embossing powder that I used for this and the sentiments as well is a white detail embossing powder. And the one that I have is from Hero Art. So for the background, I really kind of stuck true to myself, and these are two of my favorite cards that I've created in a while, and really embraced the blue as my boyfriend. So doing a nighttime scene, I knew that my grasses were going to be a little bit darker, so I went with a mowed lawn, rustic wilderness, and then black soot. I am only going to just bring this up what is this? It's not even a quarter of the card. Just to give them some place to stand on. I wanted the majority of my background to be sky, because that's kind of where the glowing, beautifulness is coming from. So I did, like I usually do, the lightest color, mid-tone, darkest color. And then normally I would go back through all three, but I didn't really feel like I needed to. I just went back in with my lightest color since this was such a small area and just went right over the top of it with the mowed lawn. It is important that you clean up your area before you move on to your sky. Otherwise, you're going to have green in your blue and it's not going to look right. So in order for this technique to work, we have to create a lighter area around our glowing object, whatever that is. In this case, it's going to be the net that has caught the stars. In the next card, it's going to be the fairy godmother's magic wand. That's going to be our glowing object. But in order to get a base color down, we're going to take our lightest color and we're going to put it all over everything, all over our entire sky portion. And at some point I am going to knock off a star and then I'm going to mess around with that, trying to get it to re-stick. I do have a trick for removing the color that gets where you don't want it to when we get to that. So now, once I have my lightest color down, I'm going to go in with my next color, which I used Prize Ribbon because I couldn't find Blueprint Sketch. Both of them work beautifully because they're fairly similar. So whichever one you have, that'll do. And we're going to create a halo around this glowing object. So I'm going to leave that part the lightest blue and just kind of work my way around it. And again, we're building up this color. So I'm going to be doing this 2 times in order to get really good color saturation and really nice blending. In this particular card, there's only one glowing object, but you certainly could have, multiples, like if you were doing lanterns in a night scene, or candles, street lights, but the same, everything is the same. So each time I'm putting on my next darkest color and I'm not quite completely covering the color I applied before it. So going through and, trying to maintain that halo, you can start to see as we're getting out to the black that it's pretty obvious that portion is much lighter, and that's exactly how we want it. Right now, it looks like a hot mess. I totally understand that. This is the part where when we're looking at our crafts and we're like, oh my God, it's so ugly. Everything I make is so ugly. This is where we push past that because it's not going to stay looking this way. We're going to go back over it, blending out those colors a little bit more, so there'll be a larger area of Chip Sapphire than there will be of Black Soot. There'll be a larger area of Prize Ribbon than there will be of Chip Sapphire, all the way out to the Salty Ocean, which I won't completely cover the net. I don't know why I can't come up with the word the net, but anyway, so I'm not going to completely cover it. I am going to be I am going to conserve a little bit of that original, coat that we put on so that it would be a little bit lighter. And then for this one, I'm going to do the same thing that I just showed you. I just wanted to show you in a different style of scene, but the idea is exactly the same. So we're doing all the ink blending exactly the same. So while this is going on, let's talk about the STAMPtember thing. So last year, Colorado Crafts, their set sold out so quickly, and people were so upset because there are people who collect these stamps, these particular Anita stamp sets, and there were people that were so upset because of how fast it sold out. And this does not just apply to them. This applies to a lot of stamp sets. And to the point that they felt the need to then send out an apology email, like, to their email subscribers. And they have no control over it. PPS, they are not producing this stamp set. So they don't have control over how many are made, but it is going to sell out fast. And I tried to take that into consideration. I know that there are people that don't enjoy this particular stamping celebration, if you will. And you know what? That's totally okay. I don't, like I said before, I only participate as a designer in the companies that either I work for, that I've agreed to do work for, or that they invite me to do it. So I have thought about, and you guys, I mean, I feel like we have a pretty transparent relationship here. I know that it's upsetting for some people to miss out on those things. And there are a lot of people who are like, it's just stamps, it's just dies, it's just, and it's different for everybody. And then you have other people who really enjoy it and they set their alarm for, 11:30 to get up to make sure that they get the stamp sets that they want. Everybody has the same opportunity. I guess it just depends on how fast you are. But it can be upsetting. It can be disappointing. Try to remember that you don't need all the things, that you can still make really beautiful cards even if you didn't get that particular stamp set. Let's go back to the card. So here, in order to create the stars in the night sky, and I'm doing this to both of the cards. I'm just showing you with this one. I used clean water to spatter on because distress inks do react with water. That's going to give me some little bleach spots that'll act like stars. And then I'm also going to go in with some perfect pearls and kind of spatter that on so I have some shimmery stars in the sky. I did use just a scrap piece of paper to block off the grass so that it really would just look like stars. And I know that this doesn't look totally amazing, awesome yet, but just hang tight. I think we're getting there. You're getting there to be able to see where we are headed to. And then here, the first one I did the embossing first, and honestly, if I had to do it all over again, I would have done the embossing first on this one, but I didn't think about it. So there is like a little magic sparkle that's included in this set, and so I wanted to heat emboss that, so like the little magic sparkle was falling on the little Cinderella mouse. But if you're going to emboss after, you have to make sure that your background is dry, because otherwise your embossing powder will stick to everything and you will be horribly upset. So make sure you dry it first, do a test run before you commit to stamping and then putting your embossing powder on it. Okay, so that's what's happening here. And then we're going to get into the Copic coloring, and I'll do a little bit of explaining for that. We've talked about night scenes in the past. Here, I did a little bit of cheating, if you will. A little Copic cheat that I'm happy to share with you. And maybe that's something that you can then utilize in your cards. But so I have thought about in the past, and you can let me know if it's something you'd be interested in, about doing a video that is like alternatives to the STAMPtember sets, like that would be very similar, that you would also be able to use or have a similar look. Like I have thought about doing that. For example, the one that I did for Honeybee Stamps, that one is like the Warm Wishes that had the little snowman in it. A perfectly acceptable replacement for that would be what is it called? Snow Family? No, that doesn't sound right. I'll have to link it. But anyway, they have another snowman set that has almost exactly the same type of elements. It just has more sentiments that you could purchase that is there year round, that you wouldn't have to, feel like you missed out on. But everybody's different. I would really be interested in your feedback to see if you enjoy it, if you don't enjoy it, if you would be interested in maybe some alternatives. So that's that. All right, let's talk about the Copic coloring. Here, you might be saying, wow, Kelly, that is a very brightly colored orange pumpkin. And you are correct, but it's not going to stay that way. So when you are coloring a night scene, you have to, pay attention to where your light source is. So my pumpkin is to the left of my light source, which is my fairy godmother wand. And so consequently, my highlight will be on the right. My mouse, my Cinderella mouse, is on the right-hand side of my light source. So all of her highlights are going to be on the left. I did not go through here with each individual color family and apply all of the color I wanted. This is my cheat. I filled it in with a lighter color, whatever my base color I wanted it to be. Okay, the only exception to that is this right here, this gold of the wand, the broom, and her little like crown, the fairy godmother crown. Those I did shade with its actual color family. Everything else I'm gonna shade with warm grays. Could have probably used cooler grays on the blue dress because blue is a cool color, but I didn't. I did what I did. I said what I said, and I stand behind it. It works fine. It just took me a little bit of extra blending to make it work right, but I'm going to use those grays to add in my shadows so that I don't have to pull out 16 different markers to get this card where I want it. So here's part of how we're going to add in that glow, and that's with a very light yellow. This is a Y00, and I'm just going to go right over those little sparkly bits, and then I'm going to use that yellow marker even further on the highlight so it will look like it is emanating light. I'm sure we'll color more of these as we get into, Halloween season and things like that. So don't worry, you'll be able to see it again. And I'm sure you've seen it before. But to tie it into the background, with just we created this night sky, with just really simple ink blending and knowing where to leave the lighter colors, and it can make such an impact. So for my fairy godmother, I chose to do some warmer browns as well as my little Cinderella mouse. And again, I'm paying attention to that light source. So the light source is in the center in between them. The fairy godmother will have a highlight on the right-hand side of her face. Cinderella will have a highlight on the left-hand side of her face because that is the side that the light source is on. So I just went in there super quickly, got in all of my darks, and now we're going to go in and further add some shading. So I wanted her little skirt to be white, which is why I'm just going in. There's no base color, if you will. And I just left the very tip of it white because her top dress would cast a shadow underneath. And the way her body is turned, all of everything underneath, like closer to the pumpkin, would be in shadow. This pumpkin is going to look awful. It's going to look terrible. Horrible, terrible, bad. But just hang tight. Just stay with me. Because when we apply the things that we know about Copics, okay, we know that they're transparent. We know that a lighter color will remove color from a darker color. When we know those things and we apply them, we're going to be able to blend this out to make it look like it's a shadow instead of like it looks right now, quite honestly. A little bit crazy. Does that mean we're going to have to go over it a couple of times? Yes, it does. Does that mean that we're going to have to bring our orange back in to go over it? Yes, it does. So basically I've layered up all of my grays, gone over pretty much the whole thing outside of the highest highlights. And now I'm going to go back in with that same orange marker, You can use whatever you have. In my case, I used a YR68, which is a little bit darker than I would normally use. And I'm just going to apply that right back over the shadow, and it's already going to start to look better. I'm going to apply it. You have to be a little bit careful. I'm going to be honest. You got to be a little bit careful to make sure you're not oversaturating it, you know, like going outside of the lines that it's bleeding out. But if you're waiting in between layers and giving it a chance to dry, you should be able to go back in there and keep lifting color. And it will also get lighter as it dries. When it's wet, it's the darkest. So for her, I didn't make any differentiation between her skirt and her apron. It just didn't feel necessary. And I use those same gray markers. Again, her highlight's going to be on the left-hand side because that is where the light source is. And I will have shadows on the right-hand side. So most of her is in shadow. Only the part that is shown, like is in front of the light, only the portion that the light would touch. Kind of sounds like the Lion King. All the parts that the light touch. Only those portions are going to be lighter. Everything else will be in shadow. And it's going to feel like it's a lot of shadow, but that is what is really going to make it feel like a nighttime scene, is all of these shadows that we are putting in. So let me know. I got to tell you, all day long, I have been perfectly fine. My allergies have been perfectly fine. I sat down to do this voiceover because I'm rushed, okay? I'm rushing to be able to get this done before Peanut goes to bed. So that means that I have sneezed 16 times and now all of a sudden my nose is running, and it's made me had to stop and pause my voiceover like 4 or 5 different times, either because I was sneezing or because I needed to blow my nose. Infuriating. Absolutely infuriating. But it's always like those things that just happen when you're just trying to get through it. So here I've added a little bit of pink to their noses and to their ears. Here's where I'm going to go back in with that same Y00, and I'm going to add that kind of glow to their noses, to the front of Cinderella's apron, as well as to the hand of the fairy godmother. Any parts that were masked, or maybe the mask was a little bit off, I'm just going to go back in and fill in with a Copic marker. I'm also going to give her just a little bit of shadow underneath her feet, and then just a couple of flicks with my marker to create the grasses. And then outside of the sentiment and 1 or 2 little sparkly things, that card is finished. This card obviously does not have nearly as much going on as the other card does, because there's no other characters. It's just this particular mouse and his little net of stars. So here's the trick to remove the color. We're not working on watercolor paper. This is Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock, but that doesn't mean that it can't take any water. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going in with some clean water. I'm filling in the star, I'm letting it sit for just a second or 2, and then I'm going in with a clean towel, blotting that up, and it removes the majority of the color. And these are pretty dark blues, but it does remove the majority of it. Once those are dry, I'll be able to color over them, but you need to just make sure that you give it time to let the color dry. Gonna remove the mask. There was a portion in between the little mouse's hand and the handle for the net that wasn't even worth cutting out. And so I just went in and filled that in. And then for the stars, it's going to be a little bit of shading, not too terribly much, because a lot of it is that white embossing. You do need to be careful because alcohol markers will color embossing. So just something to be conscientious of. Now that I'm going to go in and add, the actual shading to the net, I am going to be darkening up those stars that I previously stamped. There is a part of me that wishes I would have gone a little lighter with the background inside the net. But I didn't, and it is what it is. At the end of the day, I'm not super mad about it. It's just like lesson learned for next time to start off a little bit lighter and see how it goes. So yeah, I do think that it would be I would be very interested to see, like I said, what your guys' stance is on how you feel about that. I've just seen so many posts, and it happens every year. And whether it's the designers being like, hey, don't be nasty to me, it's not my fault, or it's people saying, you know, I can't participate because the shipping is so outrageous, you know, to ship overseas, which I'm sure that it is. Or, you know, people saying like, I just straight up don't like it. I don't understand why they don't do it this way, or I don't understand why they don't do it that way. And like, they do it the way that they do it. I mean, I think the person or the people to voice your opinions to would be Simon Says Stamp. It's their celebration. They're the ones who run it. But I would just be very curious to see of my followers, like who participates and who is like, no, thank you, and what the ratio is to that, or if you would like to see, like I said, the alternatives, because that would be something that I would be willing to do. So now that the majority of the stars are colored in, like I said, I just feel like I just went a little bit too bright, maybe. But I am going to go in, just like I did with the other card with this Y00, and I'm just going to flick the color out from the net into my background to really give it that kind of like glowing look. I did go back in with a Y02 and just went around the edges, and then blended that back out, and I did like that better. It made it a little bit stronger. And then for my mouse, I'm going to use those same W markers. I did not show you the 7, even though I used it. And I did use the W5 to just kind of reinforce those lines that were created, you know, for that net look. I could even have stretched them out a little bit further, you know, taking that net look just out a little bit more. But I didn't, and I don't think it's a big deal, but that's just something to keep in mind if you're coloring this or something similar. For the mouse, I just kept it super simple. He is on the left-hand side of my light source, so his highlights are going to be all on the right-hand side. I did not add any yellow to him. I thought about it, but I felt like he was far enough away from his net that he wouldn't necessarily have that yellow cast. I don't think either way is wrong. Well, there's no wrong in art. I mean, we're all doing our own thing here. So, but I mean, I don't think it would look like it doesn't belong. If you decided to do the yellow on this particular little mouse, I think it would be fine. So yeah, kept his front pretty dark with the W7. I know that it's very scary using those darker colors, but they are necessary, especially if you're going to do any sort of nighttime coloring. You have to be willing to make it dark if you want it to look like it has dimension. And then obviously if, you know, you're just practicing or something, I certainly wouldn't go through the trouble of doing all of the background and everything else. I would very much try the coloring to make sure that you're happy with your blending, you're happy with the direction the light coming in. You know, I would just start with the Copic coloring first before committing to the background. That way, if you're like, nope, I don't like it, I'm not a fan, you haven't put in so much work. But all of it, even none of it's a waste because it's all a learning experience. So once he was done, I used that same pink marker to go in and do his nose and his ears. This is an R20. I use it as a blush color for pretty much everything, including people. I used my same... Oh, I did add the yellow. Why can't I see it on my own card? Well, I did, and I do like it better. So see, I didn't even realize that I had done it. It's been too many days since I've made this card, y'all. And And I got the card sitting right in front of me and I didn't even notice. I guess I don't have good lighting in here. But anywho, once seeing it on the screen, I do like it better with the yellow. So I guess that makes sense. But anyway, I didn't think it looked bad before either. So I used the same browns for my handle, and then I'm going to do the same thing underneath him, adding in that shadow and the grasses. And this one, I just was aware that his foot was kind of lifted up off the ground, and so that shadow would, be a little bit, I guess, not touching his foot as much. And then the grasses, the same thing. Super simple, little flicks of color, just to give it some dimension. For both of these cards, I did a heat embossed sentiment in white. You could certainly do it in another color. I just thought that the white would show up the best. And both of them are really similar, as far as like size, and the font is exactly the same. And so one of them says, always believe you can do anything. That's the one on this one. And the other one says, anything is possible if you trust the magic. They're both super encouraging sentiments, so I don't see, that part being too far different. But just again, you want to make sure that your background is really good and dry before you're doing any kind of embossing after your ink blending. So once that's down, we're going to heat set it. And then, like I said before, we're going to add just a little bit of sparkle. And then that's pretty much going to be all she wrote for us. So, yeah, I think these are both pretty fun. And it's a technique that I thoroughly enjoy. I think that it's a great one to just apply to a bunch of different things. You could do a cauldron for Halloween. You could do a window, like a nighttime scene with a window glowing. Like we talked about before, lanterns and candles and things like that. So there's just tons of stuff. Here I went in with my clear glitter pen. One thing to note is distress inks do react with water, which means they also react with the moisture in the glitter pen. So if you're going to put it in the background, just be prepared that you may have a line. The only other thing I did was I added some stardust stickles to the stars in this one, and then to what is this? The fairy godmother's crown and wand in the other one. Just so they were all kind of like matchy. I think I will probably keep them. I think the one with the always believe you can do anything, I might maybe sneak into Nathan's lunchbox or something for like a little encouraging note. And the other one, maybe I'll send to my goddaughter, fairy godmother kind of thing. I think that might be cute. I just both think that they're, really kind of fun cards to create. And I love the glowy night sky. I think that's tons of fun. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.